Here in Lima, Peru, oxygen is abundant and living is easy. But Peter Masela is headed to a city 11,000 feet up in thin air. Let's head to Cusco, where the air is thin and the runway is long.
Admittedly, I had some hesitation about going to such a high altitude. I had been to the summit of Mauna Kea in Hawaii at around 13,800 feet, and while it was spectacular to be that high, I felt unwell on the descent back to sea level. But this is a completely new aviation experience for me, and I'm excited for the new sights, starting with seeing the tail of a Sky Airline Peru A320. And for a moment, I thought I was looking at a Frontier Airlines A320, but here, in a style similar to Frontier, this airline, called JetSmart, paints their tails with animals. This tail has been given the name Tortuga Verde for its turtle. Today's not the greatest day for leaving Lima, but the forecast for Cusco is looking good for us. On the tower, the airport rotating beacon is in use. It's an IFR day. My ride is approaching the terminal building, which actually won't be around for much longer as a new terminal is being built. With my entourage, I was able to use a private check-in area for LATAM, even though my seat will be in economy. Then, it was back out to the public area. Very crowded here. This is a busy airport, and it's unfortunate that I did not get to see the new space, but I'm enjoying the fact that I'm here, and for now, I'm going to head into one of the private lounges accessed with a fee. There's not going to be much meal service on the 1 hour-long flight to Cusco, so I ate here and enjoyed the very nice and relaxing atmosphere, but there's something else that's on my mind. This is really nice, but I just can't stop thinking about that approach to runway 28 today. I mean, this is going to be an amazing approach, and I'm strategically seated on the left-hand side of the airplane because that is the direction where we'll be able to see the airport, the mountains, and we'll be making a left-hand turn to get to the runway. I just can't wait. That's right, the approach is going to be the highlight of this journey for sure, so to make it happen, I went over to the gate where my aircraft just arrived from Chiclayo. Today's flight number will be 2037, operated by LATAM Airlines Peru. Today, I get to board in Group 2. But before we board, here's a message from today's sponsor, Extra. I had spent a great day at the beach, and as the sun set, I drove away, but I realized that I had left my wallet behind. While this is unsettling, I was confident because I have an Extra wallet with a tracker, so I used my phone to locate the wallet. My tracker says that it's right here on the beach. Using the Find My app on my phone, I'm walking in the exact direction I need to go to find my cool wallet, which is compact, has space for plenty of cards, and blocks RFID to prevent wireless theft. And with the tracker that I added to it, I know it'll never get lost. I found my Extra wallet. I'm so happy I found my wallet. You know, it can be quite intimidating when you're at the beach trying to find something, but with my Extra wallet and tracker, it made everything so easy. Now, if you're interested in an Extra product, like a wallet or a tracker, there's a link in the description below. Click on the link and enter code MASELA for savings. That's MASELLA. Now let's board the flight from Lima to Cusco. Let's head on over to Cusco. Welcome aboard. I only have one seating criteria for this flight. I'm not looking for a premium experience. I just want a seat on the left side with a well-aligned window. I got it. Okay, I am on board the LATAM A320 in my strategically chosen seat on the left-hand side of the aircraft for the view. Just want to make sure the window is very, very clean.
Pasajeros, les recordamos que en estos momentos se está efectuando el abastecimiento de combustible del avión.
Sitting back here is going to give me some great views of the wing as it dips to the left as we make that left-hand turn. I just can't wait. Can you imagine that some people on this aircraft have aisle seats? They don't know what they'll be missing. This is my seat area and a standard economy seat, but this channel doesn't focus on the interior of aircraft. I like to present flights from a unique point of view. And that means most of what you'll see will be like this.
Retírelo de la bolsa, páselo sobre su cabeza, abroche la cinta en la parte delantera y ajústela a la cintura. Al salir del avión, inflelo tirando la manilla roja o soplando por la boquilla. Pueden seguir todas estas indicaciones en la tarjeta de información de seguridad en el bolsillo del asiento. Muchas gracias. You can find all this information in the safety card located in the seat pocket in front of you. Thank you.
It's great to see the ground crew down there clear the area so that we can get pushed back onto the ramp. What a terrific moment this certainly is, the start of movement.
Dear passengers, this flight has Wi-Fi. If you're a member of LATAM Pass program, we invite you to enjoy free messaging. If you're not yet a member, we invite you to sign up for the program by accessing LATAM Play on your devices. To connect, set your devices to airplane mode, connect to the Wi-Fi LATAM Play network, and access at play.latam.com in your browser. Additionally, you can enjoy movies, series, and music on our free entertainment platform LATAM Play. And we have a good news. We are now available Disney Plus series to movies.
Well, that's great news. In addition to having a window, I always take advantage of Wi-Fi on a flight. I don't care if it's free or not, it's a great way to just keep track of your flight. Yes, that's the only reason why I use Wi-Fi. I'm not on a plane to check up on the news or check Facebook. That guy down there had to catch up. As we push back, we see other Airbus aircraft parked at remote stands. The terminal I used at the time of filming this just didn't have enough gates, so some passengers needed to get bused to their flights. I actually enjoy doing this, and I suspect that this practice will end when the new terminal has been completed. Since we're parked at a gate at an extreme end of the terminal, we need to move backwards for a while before the tug is removed. It's a busy airport with nearly 23 million passengers served in 2023. It's one of the busiest in South America, as a matter of fact. This airport is home to several carriers, including Star Peru, which has service within Peru as well as to nearby countries. And I'm so happy I got to see a Star Peru Boeing 737-300. You just don't get to see many of those anymore. And this one has a special paint scheme advertising free bags. We're still moving backwards towards the area outside the western side of the terminal building. I don't mind at all, since in a moment we're going to see another airline that doesn't operate in the USA. There goes an ATSA-8. We don't even see the Dash 8 much in the United States anymore. ATSA is also based right here in Lima. Next to it is a LATAM plane that's pretty identical to what we're on now. We've been pushed back as far as necessary, so it's now time for us to start moving forward. This time the path brings us even closer to that LATAM A320 and that ATSA-8. ATSA only has 2 Dash 8s in their fleet, and this plane actually started off in the USA with Horizon Air until 2019 when it came down here. After passing the last LATAM A320 on the ramp, we're ready to head out to the taxiway system, and we'll be following another LATAM A320 on taxiway Alpha to runway 16 left. This isn't just any LATAM A320. Since 2021, it's been sporting Avión Solidario colors. Avión Solidario is a program that facilitates free passenger and cargo transportation to support communities in the areas of health needs, environmental care, and natural disasters. We're ready to join taxiway Alpha behind the Avión Solidario plane all the way to runway 16 left, which is being used as both an arrival and departure runway today. And on the runway, we see a smaller LATAM A319 with an Ancash logo on it to help promote tourism to that region of Peru. Here's a Sky Peru A320. This is one of 10 airplanes in its fleet. For verification purposes, I see we're near runway 16 left on taxiway Alpha as indicated by this sign. We're almost there. In the distance, we see the new control tower and a Star Peru old 737 lands. Check out this old, unmarked 737. Definitely worthy of taking a photo or video for sure. As we get closer to takeoff, we observe a JetSmart A320 land, and once it clears the runway, a very small Embraer Phenom takes off, and with no airplanes on final approach at the moment, the tower was able to get more departures out. That's good, because as we turn the corner, we can see that there are quite a few airplanes waiting to take off. The left side of the airplane will not only afford a great view of landing in Cusco, but I can see the runway here as the plane that we're following takes off. We have to hold short of the runway because the tower is having one more plane land, and once it passes in front of us, the tower can have us line up and wait. The arrival will be able to vacate the runway before we come to a stop and position on the 11,500 foot long runway, so we're able to get takeoff clearance while still lining up. That's good and efficient because this airport is busy and there are planes behind us that need to land on the same runway. Let's take off for Cusco.
Tripulación próximos al despegue.
As we lift off, we can see the LATAM plane that landed ahead of us and how it has a very short taxi to the terminal. In the distance, we can see the Lima metropolitan area, and beyond that are the Andes Mountains. The view on the other side features land in the foreground and the Pacific Ocean in the distance. We have to take it all in right now because the entire climb over Lima will be obstructed by clouds. As we get controlled by our radar controller, we climb straight out to the southeast. Our destination of Cusco is also to the southeast, but more to the east than the current heading, so an eventual left turn needs to be made to put us on a course in a straight line direction over the Andes to the Cusco airport. Now, as I mentioned, Cusco is at a high altitude, at 10,860 feet, so here in our climb, we're not even close to the altitude at which we'll be while landing. This also means that once we start our descent from cruising altitude, we'll be at the ground level much sooner than if we were to land at an airport at sea level like Lima. The airport itself is at 10,860 feet, but the elevation around the airport varies and averages around 11,200 feet, and the airport is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, so it's going to be a very, very interesting approach. We can only land in one direction at this single runway airport, and departing flights can only take off in the opposite direction of landing flights. Basically, only the airspace on the airport's eastern side can be used. This is an extreme situation and not common at all, but this is not the first time I've experienced something like this. Check out my videos from the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, where I fly into and out of the Florence airport in Italy. Only one side of the single runway's airspace can be used due to a mountain on the other side, and the runway there is really, really short. It's a challenging airport, and I enjoyed my extreme flights in and out of it, and I'm ready to do it all over again, this time in Cusco, Peru, with its 11,146-foot-long runway. The runway length is a necessity to work with the thin air up there. Here in the Lima area, we're finally out of the clouds, and in the distance, we can see the Andes mountain range, which runs along the western side of South America and through Peru. Here's a fun fact about the Andes. As a child, I had always dreamed of seeing the Andes after having eaten Andes mints, the popular mint-flavored chocolates wrapped in green foil with an image of a mountain range on them. It turns out that the candy has nothing to do with the Andes Mountains, but is rather another spelling of the shorthand version of the founder's name, Andrew. The remainder of this flight will be over the Andes, so let's start our left turn to Cusco now. As we leave the Lima city area, a glance down reveals pig farms on the border between Punta Hermosa and the Punta Negra districts in the Lima province. And at this point here, we've left the Lima province and entered the Lima region. It's so different once you're above the clouds. It's a whole different world up here, and unlike the dreary skies of Lima today. We're now on course in the en route phase of flight, and just like the snow-capped mountains of the Andes Mints, I got to see real snow-capped mountains here in the actual Andes. Okay, we're up at flight level 350. Even though we're at 35,000 feet, the high altitude of the terrain below makes it seem like we're at a much lower altitude. These are some dramatic and stunning views from up here. This is Casnita, near Auco, Peru. It's at 7,500 feet elevation. It may be high, but we're headed to a place that's higher than this. Right around this point is where we were presented with snack service. I was offered a chocolate and drank some water with it. It was short and sweet. But I can't let meal service distract me from the amazing views on this short flight. Down there we see Huancavelica. It has a population of 50,000 and it's at 12,000 feet. That's higher than Cusco. When conquered by the Spanish, it was known as Huancavelica. Up in the sky, I saw an opposite direction A320 from Cusco to Lima, although it was nearly impossible to capture on camera. This is a popular route with flights going back and forth all day long. I actually saw a few planes flying in the opposite direction, but really couldn't capture them here since they were at a distance. Down below, we see Huanta in the Ayacucho region. With 3,500 inhabitants, it sits at 8,622 feet. Okay, we're starting on down to Cusco. Don't let these clouds turn you away. It'll get better soon as we descend below them, but I do admit I was a bit anxious at first when I saw them. After all, it's not too often I get to fly to an airport with an extreme approach at such a high altitude. The game plan for the approach is to descend to the Cusco area and bypass the airport to the south, continue a bit further, then make a sharp left-hand turn around the mountains and line up to runway 28. Even though we're far out now, our approach has to be coordinated with departures, as departures will use the same runway but in the opposite direction. That's runway number 10. This is due to the fact that there's mountainous terrain on the west side of the airport, so no one, no arrivals or departures, can use the western side airspace. Even though we're working with an approach controller, the tower must coordinate departures to allow enough room for us to land. The majority of flights at Cusco are going back to Lima, so most departures will climb out to the east, but once they're high enough, they'll make a left-hand turn around the northern set of mountains. We'll be flying by the southern set of mountains, so we'll fly past the airport, then make a left turn to join the final approach course. Therefore, arrivals and departures occupy different airspace except for the airspace that they share on the eastern side of the airport while on final approach or the initial climb. So it's around the point that we're at now where the ground and tower controllers need to start thinking if they can get a departure out or not. If we get too close to the airport, the departure will have to wait for us to land before we can take off. Today we'll be doing somewhat of a tight left-hand turn to the airport, nearly overflying the airport, continuing a bit further, then turning left around some local mountains before lining up. I've seen instances where planes have gone out much further to be on a straight-in approach for much longer, but we'll be more efficient today. As we enter the cloud deck with nothing to see, I invite you to take a moment to click on that subscribe button below so you don't miss out on my next video. My flight videos are fully narrated and explain a unique side of flying from a passenger's point of view. I'm actually grateful for the cloud cover. Even though I chose a flight that occurred midday, the presence of clouds means less sun glare and reflection on the aircraft's windows. This is a view that I'm not willing to miss, and clouds are actually going to be helpful. It's actually a rather thin layer of clouds, so it will let in the perfect amount of light. I'm so focused on looking out for the runway. In the distance, under the clouds, we can now see Lake Huayapo, just outside of Cusco. It's popular for recreational use and is known as a place for rest for people arriving to Cusco by road. We can see roads down there, and those arriving by car have opportunities to pause as the elevation increases to acclimate to the high altitudes. But for me, well, I'm basically being dropped in from a plane with no chance to slowly acclimate. The only difference from normal sea level air pressure is the fact that I'm in a pressurized cabin of an A320, but to me the cabin pressure feels as if we're at sea level. Then, all of a sudden, I'll be at around 11,000 feet. We're flying directly over Izucacha and Anta, and the airport is directly ahead of us. As a matter of fact, if there wasn't a mountain on the west side of the runway, we might be able to land straight ahead on runway 10 with very few turns, but that's not possible. We won't be able to get over the mountain and descend that quickly to make the runway. We have to slow down too quickly to get over it, and the lack of air molecules up here leads to less friction between the airplane and the air, which also makes it hard to slow down. This also needs to be considered for the runway we will be landing on. You need a flight deck crew that's highly trained on landing in high-altitude environments to fly into Cusco. And the airport itself is in an extremely tight urban environment, smack in the middle of the city. Viewing the city from the air, you'd think that the airport is the key attraction in the city because of its central location. Upon landing, you can get anywhere within the city of Cusco within a matter of minutes, and the urban area is limited to the area around the airport since there are mountains surrounding it. But over the years, there have been concerns about the limitations of the airport due to its position. And since the city of Cusco is space limited, the long runway takes up a considerable amount of space in the middle of the city, so a new airport is being built, and we're looking at it right now in the distance. Located in the Chinchero district, it will be called the Chinchero International Airport and sits at 12,205 feet. That's even higher than the original airport. The airport has more space and will have more capacity. This will allow for more destinations to more faraway places like New York City, Toronto, and there are even plans for non-stop flights to Istanbul and Madrid. As we proceed closer to the city and descend further, we'll notice that the population density increases. We're approaching Poroy, which is one of the districts of the Cusco province. Poroy is home to a popular train station that serves as the beginning of a journey to Machu Picchu. The Cusco province has a population of 447,000. You'll see that there are developments wherever the land is flat. We're pointed in a direction to pass just south of the Cusco airport in the densest part of Cusco City. In a few moments, we are going to see lots and lots of buildings, and right in the middle of it all will be the long runway at Cusco Airport. We'll basically be flying right over the city and close to the airport to avoid mountains off of our right, but we'll be headed for an area that forms a small valley. Just after seeing the airport, there will be some small mountains on the left side, and while in the valley, we'll descend further and turn left around a small mountain and overfly a dense urban area to the east of the airport to runway 28. So this is all being done in a tight mountainous area at a very high altitude with very thin air, which is not the kind of air that pilots normally fly through at the majority of the world's airports. There's intense concentration in the cockpit to avoid terrain and slowing down appropriately, as the thin air does not allow a plane to slow down like it normally would. We don't want to come in too fast, but fortunately there's an 11,146-foot long runway waiting for us. The long runway is also essential for departing flights since they too need more time to become airborne due to the thin air. Speaking of departures, there should be no planes taking off by this point. The airspace needs to be clear for this A320 to land, and we're getting really close as we can see the density has increased as we fly over the city of Cusco. And finally, if you look to the right, we can begin to see the runway looking down in the opposite direction of landing. We still have a few thousand feet to descend to, and the airspace that we're in now cannot be used by departures. That strip is 11,146 feet long at an elevation of 10,860 feet. You'll notice how the runway's parallel taxiways only exist on the western half of the airport. On the eastern half, you only see a runway since the eastern side is used for aircraft touching down and departures lifting off. There's never a need for a plane to taxi on that side. Once we land on runway 28, we'll clear the runway on the taxiway that leads right to the terminal building. At the terminal building, you can see that there are no planes parked, and there are no planes on any remote stands on either side. This is a rather quiet period for the airport. There's no traffic at all, no planes are waiting to take off, and the runway is ours. Now you can see the elevated terrain between our plane and the airport. We need to continue in this direction to descend in a safe area before we can turn to the left and land, and our left turn will need to occur in a gap between the mountains. We're surrounded by mountains now and will continue to be as we turn left, then left again to join the final approach course. We'll temporarily lose sight of the runway as we continue out, but we'll see it again before we land on it. Now you know exactly why I strategically chose a seat on the left side of the plane. Passengers on the right side do get to see mountains, but they missed out on the Cusco city overview and the view of the runway right in the middle of the city. That populated gap down there between the mountains is too close to the airport for us to turn over, but we'll be taking the next gap just past this elevated terrain off our left that we're getting really close to. The peaks here are at around 12,100 feet, and the airport is at 10,800 feet. It's too close to the runway to fly over, so we need to go around it, which of course provides for some dramatic views on the left side of the plane. Although it was hard for me to turn my head inward during this fascinating time, judging from the wows that I heard around me, I'm pretty sure most passengers on this side of the plane were looking out and were in awe. This was one of the greatest moments of this flight, flying around a mountain while approaching a very dense urban area at a low altitude. Well, a low altitude above ground level, that is. In reality, we're at around 12,000 feet above sea level here. As we make the final turn, we approach the city around the Chimpahuayla district. This part of Cusco is the less touristy part, with the main attractions being on the other side of the airport. We'll keep turning left until we're lined up with the runway. Speaking of the runway, I'm looking out for it again as we turn onto the final. There it is. What a place to put an airport. The immediate density around it is unreal. Good thing there aren't any tall buildings here to add to the mix of things on the final approach course. There's already a lot going on here with the thin air and tight operating environment around the field. We're clear to land on runway 28 as we pass over Via de Evitamiento and Highway 3S. And now we get to see the other side of the mountain that we just made a U-turn around. As we join the final approach course, you'll see how close we are to the terrain and how uneven the surface below us is, but as we know, there's an over 11,000-foot strip of land directly in front of us. Once we land, we'll need to brake hard to slow down in the thin air, and we'll vacate the runway next to the terminal. We'll pull into the terminal, making us the only airliner there. I'll let you listen into the sounds of landing, followed by a well-deserved applause from the passengers.
Gracias por elegir volar con LATAM. Para su seguridad les solicitamos que permanezcan sentados hasta que la señal de cinturones se apague. Abran con cuidado los compartimentos superiores ya que el equipaje pudo haberse movido durante el vuelo y teniendo la precaución de retirarlo utilizando ambas manos. Al bajar, por favor, asegúrese de llevar todos sus artículos personales y de no dejar residuos dentro del avión. Desde ahora pueden usar los equipos electrónicos con normalidad. Recuerden que al ser parte de nuestro programa LATAM A320 disfrutan del mundo sin fronteras mientras acumulan millas para canjear por viajes y acceder a mejores beneficios. Asimismo, los invitamos a planificar sus próximas vacaciones de principio a fin en latam.com, eligiendo su paquete Hotel Auto y Más, siempre acumulando millas. Esperamos tenerlos a bordo en su próximo viaje. Les informamos que la entrega de equipajes en la cinta se puede tardar más de lo esperado debido a procedimientos de las autoridades del aeropuerto. Agradecemos su comprensión.
After a complex approach to the runway, we have an extremely simple taxi to the terminal. We basically just have to proceed straight ahead, and the ground crew is there waiting for us to marshal us into our parking position, but I just can't help but think about what just happened.
I'm so happy I chose a seat on the left-hand side of the plane.
And the happiness continues. See that movable staircase there? Well, it's being put into position at the rear door so we can deplane via stairs. Yes! Despite there being jet bridges at this airport, passengers disembarked via the forward and rear doors using air stairs. That was just amazing. I'm now at 10,860 feet above sea level. I'm concerned about the oxygen, but elated to be in such a place. I can't wait to explore the city, and I'm grateful for the fact that the next plane that landed after us used a jet bridge to deplane, and we did not. For now, it's time to head out. After retrieving my bags and bag claim, within minutes I was on the streets of Cusco outside the airport. This wall borders the runway on its western side. I'm headed downtown. Welcome to the 7th most populous city in Peru, Cusco. A World Heritage Site, Cusco was once the capital of the Inca Empire and is a great city to visit as a tourist attraction. While I enjoyed my time there, within a few hours of landing, I had a headache. It was a different kind of headache caused by lack of oxygen, and fortunately the hotels offer free oxygen. With my pulse ox levels in the low 80s, regular doses of oxygen throughout my time there brought the levels back to normal, but I had to say that even after a few days, I had a tough time acclimating. Cusco is the base for visits to Machu Picchu, and since Machu Picchu is at a lower altitude, the day I visited, I felt fine as I took the scenic train to its last stop at Aguascalientes, and from there, I made the short journey to Machu Picchu. Coming up next on this channel, I'll talk about my struggles with oxygen and take you back to Lima from the challenging Cusco airport. Stay tuned.